Oh, I spilt it.
Great. Hello, everyone. So, this
Hi.
is my girlfriend Megan. You may have seen her on the stream before. We are actually going to be continuing the series of Jono Explains Things to Megan. I don't think there's anything to clean that up, so we're just going to have to live with it. Megan wanted to continue the tradition of eating on stream, so she has her snack of choice, Pocky, and a
It
cup
had no
of coffee.
strawberry.
Oh, yeah.
I spilt the coffee when I was dinging it like a
Well,
triangle.
don't get it on JJ Watt, right? You know, just
They couldn't even see that.
yeah. Oh, you gonna get
It's a car
up
that
close
he
and
made
personal? Yeah.
out of a pizza box, and it hung on our Christmas tree.
Yeah.
This is the one thing he asked to be on it. So.
All right. So today we are going to be talking about the topic of thermodynamics. Now, this is a topic that not many people understand, and I wouldn't necessarily say I am a professional on, even though I am going to school for engineering. Um, I I had a professor explain to me that make the claim that the first time you try to learn thermodynamics, you don't understand it. And then the second time you try to learn thermodynamics, you think you understand it. And then the third time you accept that you don't understand it, and then you start using it practically. So we are going to be trying to explain in terms that people that aren't necessarily from an engineering background can understand. So that's why I wanted to get you on, so that you could make sure that I'm staying true to that demographic, and so you can ask questions when you feel I'm not explaining things thoroughly.
Right.
So
if anyone doesn't know my background, dance didn't do well. That's like I can't talk. I could not talk at all today. I did not do that well at high school either.
well,
So,
you did
was okay.
fine. You were just a little unmotivated, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
Does thermodynamics have to do with like temperatures?
We'll get to the whole thing. So
Because that's what it sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah. Okay,
like the
so
whole concept of turning something on.
we can start out by breaking down the word, I guess, since we're already there. So we will
You're
write
welcome.
down thermodynamics.
Sorry, this stuff.
So this is a two-part word, thermo and dynamics.
I think mix is its own part. So I think it's dyna and then mix.
Well, yeah, but dynamics itself is a word, and so if we add thermo on top of it,
Okay.
so what we're doing is, so thermo obviously is dealing with, like you said, temperature, more specifically dealing with heat. So heat is a form of energy, and so it actually, in a sense, is all energy. So when we have movement, when we have anything, it's all kind of boiling back down to the baseline energy. So when we have temperature, well, actually,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Sorry. That's what I was about to say. Is that why like cold isn't part of it? Because like, the particles when something is cold don't, or the atoms don't like vibrate as much.
Well, we can't measure something as being a certain amount of cold, because what we're dealing with
we just deal
is
with the lack of heat.
So when we have something that's cold, it has less heat than we are used to, and that's why we feel it is cold. So thermo means it's dealing with heat and energy. Dynamics means that we are talking about possibly talking about changes in these states of energy and heat.
So cold isn't out of the question for thermodynamics. It's just generally not touched upon.
No. So the word cold is just in thermodynamics is defined as less heat.
Right.
So,
okay, but like
yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Our word for it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The concept. Our
but
concept.
The one thing to keep in mind is that thermodynamics isn't necessarily restricted to temperature. Just because it's talking about heat isn't necessarily temperature in a sense, because there's a lot of things that
like
heat
friction.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that happen with heat and energy that don't necessarily deal specifically with temperature. So we might get into those contingencies, but I'm thinking that today we're going to try and keep things relatively broad and the summarization of thermodynamics, and then if we want to get into the specifics later, we might save that for another day. So this is what thermodynamics is, and I'm going to clear the board here, and we're just going to start talking a little bit about the basics. So with thermodynamics, one of the key things is defining a system. So what we have to figure out is what are the boundaries of what we're talking about. And so if we have a environment, say we have this room that we're in.
Like a physical boundary, like a fence, or like boundaries that
We're just sort of imagining where the boundaries are. Because we
Okay.
can only really analyze things from within the boundaries, because if we're outside the boundary, then it's an infinite boundary. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we set the boundary.
Yeah, so we want to define where we are. So let's say that we have the room that we are currently in. Here is me, and here is Megan.
Why'd you give me a fat head?
It's like the same diameter.
I don't know. My neck's
Let's
jammed up in
okay.
there.
Are we gonna actually measure this? Let's go. That's pretty close. It's a little bigger.
But you didn't
But
give me any
if we rotate it by 90 degrees, it's like you took my head and rotated it. So I think we're good. But all right. So we have this environment of the room that we are currently in. Now there are a couple different situations where we could describe a boundary, and so what we have to define is what is in the system and what is in the environment. And in thermodynamics, sometimes there is a third one here, to where because we're in this specific room, there may be some conditions that aren't necessarily true outside of the room, but we'll keep it simple for this case. So we can just go ahead and draw a box around whatever we want. We can even draw, it doesn't have to be a box, we could draw whatever shape we want.
Can we get
So
a trapezoid around my foot?
we could. So if we wanted to draw a trapezoid around Megan's foot, we could say that this is our system, and we can start doing analysis based off of heat entering and leaving the system, what's happening. Obviously, her body is creating heat through the normal processes that bodies do so, and that would be providing heat to the system. But there also might be some drafts coming in, bringing heat and whatnot. So, but the key to get here is that we are not restricted in what we define as our boundary. So we could put one around me. We could put one around both of us, or we could just go ahead and put one around the entire environment, and all of these would be considered valid boundaries, but the definition of what's going on inside them can change. So that's just sort of a baseline for what I mean when I'm talking about the system. The system is whatever's within this boundary we're defining. So for some vocab, we could say that this could be an open system, which currently it is. An open system means that mass and energy can cross the boundary. So if we imagine that that door is open, Lola could enter the room, and mass would be entering the system also. And then air can also get through the cracks under the door. So
Air is important.
yeah.
Air is important.
So in most cases, we are going to have an open system. In fact, in all cases that are not ideal, we have an open system, but we have.
Yeah, I mean, technically, this is open because the crack under the door.
Yep.
Like, unless it's vacuum sealed, it's
And
basically an open system.
even on a completely like microscopic scale, there is still some mass transfer through the walls. It is just extremely slow. So.
Well, like, okay, but if you think about like pressurization in a spaceship.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like not vacuum sealed because you're not sucking the air out of the capsule, but like it's basically it's a vacuum seal.
Yeah. So the air is trapped inside.
A tiny bits of particles that aren't obviously because nothing ever actually touches. It's like really, 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 really close, but nothing ever actually touches, right? So then
yeah.
why does, like, if space is nothingness, and like you see in movies and stuff, the airlock opens and everything gets sucked out, like, why doesn't it treat it like a crack in the glass, and when you tap on the crack it gets bigger? Like, why doesn't it take that little bit of air and slowly go?
Well, we might have to save that one for another day. I feel like that's an explanation in its own. But essentially,
Okay.
because of the way things are bonded, they have a certain strength they have a certain resistance to being pulled apart. So if there were enough pressure within the vessel, then you would have a problem. But because it is engineered in order to keep that air within, then we don't have too much of a problem. And so what the case is, if we have an environment like a spaceship, which is vacuum sealed, in most cases we can imagine that system is a closed system. And what a closed system is, and we can draw that with a just like a solid line. A closed system means that energy can get in and out. So this is heat.
That doesn't seem like it's closed.
But if we try to put mass into the system, it cannot enter through the boundary. So that's what I mean by a closed system, is that
kind of like a cell membrane.
In a sense, so cell membranes are selective in what they allow to cross over the boundary.
Right,
but,
which is kind of what this is. Like, mass can't get in, but other stuff.
But so we can have
Energy.
heat enter the system, and we can see that, like, if you have a spaceship out in orbit or in space, if the sun is within view, you are getting radiation from the sun, and that's heating up the vessel. Now, this isn't the same as
radiation or the actual heat of the sun.
Well, the radiation is from the sun, and radiation is a form of heat transfer.
But radiation isn't actually hot.
It is when it hits you.
But like X-rays and stuff, aren't those? That's why they put like those things, the packs over your belly, so you don't screw up your organs.
If you had enough of an intense beam of X-ray, it would heat you up. Well, okay, no. There's difference between frequency and amplitude. So gamma rays and X-rays have different frequency, but amplitude is how powerful they are.
Right.
So it's reasons why, like, the microwaves can heat up stuff inside them, but they're not necessarily a deadly frequency because they can't break through the barrier that they put on the microwave. But okay, so a closed system is.
I used to try radiating myself.
Oh yeah.
I tried putting my face against the microwave to see if I could get more brain power. I was weird. I was like 6 or 7 at this time. Please continue.
So, open system means that mass and heat can both transfer over the border. Closed system means that only heat can transfer over the border. And we have a third system, which is the highly idealized case, which is a isolated boundary condition. And this basically means that heat cannot transfer over the border, and neither can mass. So whatever's in here is going to stay in here, and whatever's out here is going to stay out here, and they will not interact. It's a beautiful. Yeah. So the problem with these systems is that if we actually had a isolated system, we wouldn't know what was going on in there because we can't take any measurements. Because any tampering with the system would cause it to not be isolated. Does that make sense?
Couldn't you, like, before you sealed it up, whatever, couldn't you put stuff in there that would measure it for you during the experiment?
Yes,
or
but
would that mess up the experiment?
It's a weird situation. So yes, I guess that would technically make sense if you had something like a measuring device that was running while inside. But the problem is that we can't necessarily. It's hard to transfer information across an isolated system. So you would technically have to break the isolated system to open that. But that is true that if you had the measuring device within the system, you could technically, like, record the measurements and then look at them later.
Like on a computer.
But if you're asking for real-time measurements, this is not a case that you necessarily want to work with because in real practice you can't necessarily have a thermometer sticking in there because then that's a break in the seal. So, but these are the three cases.
So it has to just be an empty room? with a vacuum seal? That doesn't seem like it
No, no,
could...
no. So an isolated system can have stuff in it, but we can't tell what's happening within because we're not getting any information out.
Right, but you're saying that putting in a thermometer would mess it up, and it wouldn't be
If
what
we
we're trying
had a
to test.
thermometer sticking across the boundary, so that we
I was
could.
saying, like, if we had, like, I don't know if there's anything like this, but probably, like, a thermometer in there, and it had some kind of, like, Bluetooth thing that could send the information
That's the problem.
to your computer.
If Bluetooth was able to cross the boundary, then so can heat. Because if any waves can get across the boundary, then it's no longer an isolated system. That's why it's an ideal case, and sometimes we can.
So basically, it just has to be a completely solid room with nothing in it.
Well, it can have stuff. It can have stuff in it,
nothing
but
that we could use to our
exactly.
advantage. So there's no point in having stuff in it.
But the theory of it is important because there are situations where we can simulate a environment that may be a closed system as an isolated system, and the math is easier. Does that make sense?
So we the closest that we can get is an isolated system.
Oh no, so we can't have an isolated system, but we can have if we had a closed system, but there was very minimal heat transfer, then we could claim that it was an isolated system for math purposes. The math wouldn't be exact, but we get really close.
Basically as close as we can get. Like why people generally will like test on rats if they're looking at lifespan stuff because they're very similar to us and they don't have to wait 80 plus years to find the results.
Yep, that's a good analogy.
Okay.
So we have our three cases of an open system, a closed system, and an isolated system. Technically, every system that we will ever see in practice is an open system.
Sorry. I was gonna just make a really weird noise and I couldn't do it.
Oh,
Continue. Closed system.
So every situation is an open system.
Open system.
But in practical purposes, there are systems that we can consider closed because the mass transfer is so slow.
Okay, wait. So, sorry. Open system is like this room with the door open.
Yes.
Closed system is like basically an airlock.
Yes, it's an airlock, but like say that it's like a metal airlock and we have a heater under it. The heat can still get in there because it can heat things up through the boundary.
Gotcha. Make sense? Okay, so closed is the cell membrane, basically like it. It takes in the nutrients
if we're
stuff,
considering energy as one thing and mass as another thing, it can take in energy through the membrane, but it can't bring mass in.
Right, because cells generally won't let in like viruses like that.
They try, but it doesn't.
Well, I know, but like you know what I'm saying. Like they won't let in a physical object. It's generally the nutrients that they just need. Anyway,
yeah. Okay.
So then
an isolated system
is like I have this hollow concrete cube.
Mm-hmm.
There's no opening to it. There's no vacuum seal. It's physically just a concrete hollow cube.
Mm-hmm.
That's isolated.
Yeah. So the isolated system, you can imagine, going back to the last segment of this series, I talked about Schrodinger's cat. So the isolated system is the box we put Schrodinger's cat in. We have no idea what's going on inside.
How do we...
And we don't know until we open it up.
Quick question, though. How did we put the cat inside if it's isolated? Because then it would only be closed.
We don't make it isolated until we put it inside.
So we have a box without a lid, and then we
put the lid over top of it.
Yeah. Slab over the top.
If you want to encase a cat in concrete, yeah.
Which I don't. I'm not for that, guys. You're over here. I'm not for that, okay? Whoever's the one person watching, thank you, even if we're just like...
It may be me. Sometimes it thinks that I'm a person watching, but I'm not sure why. Yeah, so we've gone over some vocab. We've talked about heat. We've talked about mass. We've talked about the 3 boundary conditions. And now I figure I'll give a little rundown on some of the laws of thermodynamics. And so these are the laws that everything has to follow because everything in the world boils back down to thermodynamics in a sense. Unless you want to talk about mathematics, and then everything boils down to mathematics. But if we're talking about thermodynamics, then psychology is a version of biology, and biology is a version of chemistry, and chemistry is a version of thermodynamics. So it's
I'm
kind of
good
those
at
things.
biology.
Yeah. So, we
I'm decent at biology.
if we are talking about the first law of thermodynamics, have you ever heard of the first law of thermodynamics?
We don't talk about thermodynamics.
That's very close. Apparently, I'm eating this now.
I've been meaning to feed you the past few, and they were
Oh, yeah.
mouth instead.
Interesting how the mass cannot transfer across the boundary. Yeah.
I'm not that bad.
I'm pretty bad. I make bad jokes.
He makes really bad jokes.
So the first law of thermodynamics deals with energy. You've probably heard the sentence that people usually use to describe the first law of thermodynamics. It's not complete,
I think you've told
but
me. I just don't remember.
the first law of thermodynamics is energy conservation. So it means that
Recycling?
energy cannot be created or destroyed. So in a sense,
Right.
it's always turned into something else, which I guess you could say was recycling.
Recycling energy.
So there is an equation
Reincarnation.
that is used for this. We say that our energy is equal to our heat. So this is the
MC
change in energy is equal to
Oh.
the heat and the work minus the work. So this is the heat in minus the work in. So if we imagine we have our system here, this is our
In?
magic box.
In?
In.
Like, why is heat a Q?
That's just what we usually use for heat. So
What
that's
does H stand for then?
H is actually enthalpy, which is dealing with
Why not E? Oh, because E is energy.
E is energy. U is internal energy. There's a lot of things, but for now, let's just remember that
Okay,
Q is
so
heat, W
in,
is work.
Does that mean that's what goes into like pushing an object? Let's say.
Yeah.
Like,
So
that's
let's
what's
say that.
from a specific
Oh, I was gonna delete that. So
being.
let's say that we
Yes.
have our system here, and this system is a piston in a chamber. So this is our chamber, and we have our piston here.
Piston is like the thing in the car, like in the
Yes.
engine that was.
So we have our chamber here. We have some gas in here.
It looks like, you know what it looks like to me? And it's all like, there's only one thing left to do. Push the red button.
Yeah,
It looks like.
I can see that.
It
Yeah.
looks like, or an ice cream cone.
So we have our piston.
Like, you just ignore me.
And this is our system. So we're going to draw this boundary line like this. And we can include the piston. A lot of cases in thermodynamics, especially when you're just learning in like a first class, we will assume that the piston doesn't have any mass. Now, obviously, this can't actually happen, but for math purposes, it makes things a lot easier.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we have this gas. This gas is at a certain temperature, pressure, all the things you need to know about a gas for any reason. And basically, to explain this equation, which may be somewhat intuitive, if we have a certain amount of energy in here to start, right? So we have this energy E in here. I could probably draw that a little darker.
You like constellated it, so I couldn't really see. It's like, oh, do you see the man shooting an arrow at the wild boar, and the boar is trying to feed its children? And you're like, no.
I never really saw them either, but
yeah, there's a couple I know, but
so
sorry,
we can imagine that we have this. We can have heat transfer in, so that's what our Q in is. If the heat were going out, this would just be a negative number. So we call it Q in just for purposes of writing this equation, so that we don't have to switch around things. But you can remember that in is positive and out is negative. And then
so if I said W out, I'd be adding the work.
Correct. And I'll explain in a second how this makes sense. So we have our Q in, and this piston can be moved. So if we push the piston into the cylinder, then we're compressing this gas, correct?
Right, because it'd be more pressure within the boundary.
Yes. So if we compress this gas, then it has an ability to do work and push this piston back. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
it's like when you eat a bunch of beans and you get all gassy, but then it's all and it hurts.
I
and then
may
you
have
fart.
actually written the equation
And then you
backwards.
fart or you poop.
So I'm actually going to erase this. Um, so because I'm saying that this is the change in the energy in the system,
Did my gas
I
analogy
did this
make you find
backwards.
something?
I
Did
think so.
me talking about farts help you with the engineering
Let's go with
equation?
yes, just so the
So I
people
shut
back home have something to root for. So I'm going
Always
to
root for farts, guys.
I'm going
They're
to
funny.
switch this to Q out and work out. Um, sorry about that. So we're saying that
I work out. Oh, look at my
actually, I gotta make sure I get this right so that people aren't screaming at me.
Look it up.
Well, okay.
I mean, I guess that's what we're
It makes
here for.
sense, but so basically, we want the positive thing to be what is when we put a positive number in here, it makes sense, right? So
yeah.
if so we can have work in. If work is in, then that's a negative number because this is what we're saying is positive, is work out. So if it's a negative number, then we're adding it, the system is gaining energy. Does that make sense?
When we put the piston into the cylinder.
So when we push the piston in,
it's gaining energy.
the system's gaining energy, so work in is negative in this equation because we have this minus here.
Never mind. I was thinking, wouldn't the piston be losing energy because that's the thing that initiates movement, but we're technically the one who's initiating the movement.
So we're kind of losing energy into the system, but the system has the potential to push back. So the system is gaining energy.
It's
and
like
also,
momentum. Like it gets the energy from us and then pushes it back.
Yeah, in a sense. So we have our Q in. That is also, if the Q in is positive, then the system is gaining energy because if we shoot X-rays into here and heat up the system, then we are gaining energy. That makes sense, correct?
We're shooting what into the system to gain
Just
energy?
some sort of beam, I don't know, lasers.
Gotcha.
We could
radioactive
heat up this system. So heat is transferring across the border, and it is gaining a total energy of E. So this delta symbol is for change. So that just means this is the change in energy. All right.
Okay.
So the change in energy is equal to.
Did I ever learn that in like statistics or calculus?
I feel like you've probably. Oh.
Or from you.
I was gonna say, did you take calculus or did?
Yeah, I remember I took it with you. I technically took AP Calc.
Mm-hmm.
Or did we take Stat last year?
We took Stat.
But I definitely took AP Calc before that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I'll be okay with AP Calc because Miss Wilson's really good. And then I'm good at math. I just need a little bit longer than everybody else. Like I just can't do 1.5 lessons every day in a 40-minute period. Like I need
practice.
Just
Just for context, if there were a laptop with math homework on it and a laptop next to it that had just a squirrel dancing, I don't think the math would happen. But
no, it wouldn't. But like you remember when I started doing the college algebra stuff, I thought college algebra was the first class you were supposed to take and not college mathematics. And it was like 3 steps into the STEM program, which is so not what I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed him on FaceTime and my textbook and my notes and the problem. And it took me like 4 hours to complete a 12-question homework, but I aced the class. I was like the only person that like got A's on the test because I worked hard and I was good at it.
Yep, she's a hard worker and
What you want?
She wants to learn, but
Most
sometimes
the
the schooling environment is not favorable.
To me, no.
Yeah.
If you can't tell, I get distracted easily.
So, speaking of distraction, let's get back to the thermodynamics. So, this is our law. I'm terrible at drawing a straight line, apparently. It's still not straight.
Isn't there a tool?
There is,
there a tool,
but that's cheating.
No. Look, there's even shape ones. Like, you could have just made our heads the same size.
Yeah, I could have, but, you know, when in Rome.
We don't have money to go to Rome.
So this is essentially the first law of thermodynamics. So
that took a while.
It is the conservation of energy. It's telling you that energy is changing if you're adding stuff to the system. It's pretty logical. So if you add energy to the system, the energy in the system goes up. And also, you can't necessarily lose energy because that energy is still there and it could push back.
I need to fix my green lollipop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? There's like holes in it and whatnot, or do you just?
No, because when we first made it, we were talking about making it rainbow like the
Yes.
and then
yes.
that never happened.
We
the
never
stream
made
was
the
about to
rainbow
start.
lollipop. Okay. So we are going to move on and talk a little bit about the second law of thermodynamics. Now, this law could definitely take an entire video of its own. So
I will shut up.
I'm not going to go into too. That is not how you spell thermo. I'm not going to go into too much depth with the second law, but we will bring it up. The reason that I'm saying this is that instead of energy, we are now talking about entropy. So, have you heard anything about entropy, just off the top of your head?
I know it has to do with energy, and that's not just because of that's what the topic we're talking about is. I know it has to do with it. I can't remember if it's like specifically taking energy in or how it changes energy.
Okay, well, I just wanted to see.
I start thinking about like empathy. Like that's what I kind of start thinking about when I hear entropy.
And
but
don't
I
get
know
empathy.
that's not the same thing.
Don't get empathy confused with enthalpy, but so we have entropy, and entropy is a lot of people call it the measure of chaos. I had a thermodynamics teacher actually call this the measure of how many options you have, which is a slightly more positive way of looking at it. But in a sense, entropy is what people usually say is the measure of chaos. So what you have to know.
1 to 10, I'd be like a 9.
There are no units in there. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh. What was the one unit we came up with earlier? The unit of, it's not leprechauns. I don't know why I'm thinking leprechauns.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I know you were talking about saying Samato for random code words, but
yeah.
Okay. So entropy. The one thing you need to know about entropy is that entropy, which we usually denote as an S, always goes up or stays the same. It cannot go down. So it is greater than and equal to 0. No, we don't usually talk about speed in general. It's usually v for velocities because velocity also implies direction.
That makes sense.
But entropy always increases or stays the same in an ideal case. So the reason for this, this is just the law of the universe. So what's happening is all things move towards higher entropy. And a way to explain this is if we had a box here and we put, just imagine this is like a ball pit, okay?
Entropy is chaos.
Yeah. So we have like a ball pit, right?
How many colors?
How many colors do you want? 6. Okay, so we're gonna
you're gonna have to do them all. We'll do 3. We'll do
3 colors.
Hot pink and blue.
I have this pink. Is that fine?
I guess.
So we're gonna go pink, and then we'll get blue.
You get the solid ball tool. You can just click into
and then yellow. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Well, you can't really see that. That's fine. Just leave it.
And then we can copy that puppy.
This is so much work. Why not just grab
paste,
the solid circle tool?
Paste. All right, but
and just click and drag a whole bunch across that.
I'm just
whole
gonna
ball
keep
pit.
drawing a bunch of these while I'm talking. So all of these balls are on this side of this boundary that we've set up. So just imagine there's a big plastic wall in the ball pit, and
I'm not even gonna go where I was about to go.
Okay, yeah. Funny. So we have this ball pit, and there's a wall. It's just a big plastic divider, and all of the balls in the ball pit are on this side of the wall. All right. So that's the scenario we have.
That's America.
So that's
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
we're gonna get through this,
I'm
Megan.
so tired and that was awful. I'm sorry.
All right. So this is state 1, right? If
Okay.
I pull this line, if I take the divider out, what's gonna happen? Work with me here.
Continue. They're gonna roll over into the other side.
Okay, so these this organized structure of having all of the do I need to say contents of the pit?
Just say the balls.
Okay, all of the balls are on this side. When you take the divider out, they move to this side. And the reason for this is because over here they're organized. They're all organized to one side, and the universe wants to move towards more chaotic systems. So the balls over here want to spread out. Now this obviously in a real scenario, I'll eat this in a second. In a real scenario, there would be a lot to do with gravity pulling the.
Both on top first, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So it would want to
the
spread out, but
would the weight of the top one push out the bottom ones?
it
Like,
would.
Like,
It'd sort
Or
of
would
be
it
like a
just be like,
buoyancy kind of thing. But if we imagine that these are molecules in a box and we
Right.
have them all pushed to one side, there's a vacuum on the other side. It wants to get
It's the airlock.
so it wants when we take the airlock out, it gets sucked into the other chamber, and so this is a representation of how entropy is the driving force in a reaction. So entropy has to go up. So if we see that there is a state that can be achieved by increasing the entropy, by making it chaotic, then the universe will naturally approach that state.
So, like, if I had a glass of water and I poured it into another glass, that would be increasing the entropy until it settles back into the new glass?
A little bit. So there's a lot going on there, but
But the idea of, like, it's moving, like, it gets craziness, and then it settles again.
yeah.
Kind
So because I don't know that it's the best analogy, because having it settle back down would mean that it kind of went back to the same state. But
this would too. The balls would all until
But
like some kid.
our
jumps into it.
beginning state is all to one side, and our end state is spread out. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
So
pouring water onto a counter.
yeah, in a sense. So we have it organized in a glass, and then we pour it all over the floor. And you have to think about that will happen on its own. So let's say that it's teetering on the edge, the glass falls over, shatters, spills the water everywhere. The amount of energy that we need to use to put that glass back together and put the water back in the glass is significantly larger than the energy that we need to just tap the glass and push it over. Or
it's like smiling and frowning.
we also, in that case, we kind of gain some energy because there was potential energy because it was on the top of the counter and it fell over, but we would have to use that energy to put it back on the counter. But the actual organization itself, there is some irreversibility with that. So that's kind of like the broken glass. So that was an interesting face. Yeah.
Sorry. Looked over. I was like, "Wow." I used to make that face when I was like 7. My parents like, "No, you're gonna eat your vegetables." And I was like,
Oh, okay. We're gonna have a pink
fell
piston.
asleep at the table.
Hopefully, there's no jokes to be made about this. So we have our piston here, right? And we are going to.
It's sideways.
It can be a sideways piston.
What is it in? Is it in a box?
It's the same situation we had before. I just
It's
rotated
not.
it. I believe you. Okay. So basically what the second law of thermodynamics says is if we have a pin, say this is a pressurized chamber, right? So there's a lot going on in here, right? And we have a little pin here holding the piston in place, okay? If we remove this pin and let this expand to where it wants to be, so that
Right.
it's at equilibrium with the
It's a
environment.
doorstop.
Yeah. So if we open this this pin and let the piston move outwards, then we can get some work out of that. So it will push out. It will get some mechanical work because it's actually moving. But if we want to push this back, say we want to put the exact same amount of energy in.
Sorry, I was thinking of an analogy in my head, and that was a very painful thought.
Okay. Do you want to share with the class, or is it a little off the beaten path?
I was gonna say lady problem.
Okay. So if we have a piston and it pushes out, then we're gonna get some work out, right? Right. So we were talking about that earlier. So if there's energy in the system from it being pressurized, then when it releases that energy, it turns it into work by pushing the piston, right? If we take that work and put it back into the system to push the piston back, because entropy always increases or stays the same, if this is a case where we have friction or different irreversibilities, then if we just put the same amount of work in, then we won't get back to where we can lock it with the pin.
We have to put an excessive amount.
We have to put extra energy in because we've lost some energy due to irreversibilities, which is what entropy is essentially saying, is that entropy will always increase in practical situations because there is friction, there's wind resistance, there's everything.
Right.
So,
quick question. You have two doors.
Mm-hmm.
One person just left this one, and it starts to close. A lot of people take that swinging door and pull it back open, walk through that side. Wouldn't it require less energy to take the unmoving door and open it?
It depends.
Since this is going the opposite direction?
Because with friction, alright, friction, there is less friction when things are moving. So it takes more force to get something moving than it does to keep it moving.
Right,
but because it's moving backwards, there's some weird stuff. But yes, in a sense, it would take more initial force because it was moving towards you. But I don't know. I think they designed doors so that it's not that case. But I don't know, because it's slowing down with the brake on the door. But I don't know. I'm not a door expert.
I don't know. I always think about that when I'm going through doors.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a lot of people who open the ones that are closing. I'm like, heh.
Yeah.
Especially when they're like tinted, you can't see through them.
I think the reason that I do it is because I don't have to open it as much because it's already slightly open.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
So I can get through before.
Like use that amount of energy for as long.
Yeah.
Because do you need another one?
Yeah. Where would I put it?
I don't know.
Okay. So I think we've done enough of a summary of the second law. So we're just going to summarize in general what we've talked about today. And if you want us to go into more depth...
More laws?
No, there are more. There's a third law. There's a zeroth law. But zeroth law. But they're not that important for everyday use.
Why not zeroist? Zero-end.
But it's first, second, third, like fifth, zeroth. I don't know.
I don't get why it has
So,
to do that.
What I was saying is, if you want us to go into depth on any of these specific topics or continue and possibly talk about the zeroth law, then let us know in the chat. And I'm sure Megan will be very excited to continue this conversation.
I have a midterm.
No, I don't mean today. I mean on another day. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about
So we talked about thermo. We talked about open systems, closed systems. That's okay.
Chlorine systems.
Isolated system. So, do you want to give a quick rundown of what those guys were while I write the rest of this?
Open is like you're in a room with an open door. There's a very clear path to the outside, which a lot of, computer people don't find anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Love you.
Oh, yeah? Do you see
Closed.
this adventure race shirt that I got today? Uh-huh, yeah.
Closed could be anywhere from you close the door in that room and it's easy to open to like an airlock on a spaceship because it's sealed. It's pretty much sealed for all intents and purposes, but there's just a tiny little bit that's getting through there. And then isolated is like a hollow concrete cube, and there's no outs or windows or any kind of cracks or crevices. It's just
Mm-hmm. And
like those. No, never mind. I was gonna say the storage bags that you suck the air out of, but they technically have a door.
And so, to remind you, this is a completely ideal case, so we
That's what
can't
you
really
want.
reach that. Well,
That's what you
it's
want.
ideal because it's perfect in a sense,
Right, but
we can't really get there.
can't measure anything
And
because of it.
and
It's so
practically,
close.
it's not necessarily what we want because it's what's inside is immeasurable from the outside. Closed system is still ideal, but because there is still technically some mass transfer at a very slow rate through things like molecules moving out of the
It's
way
like a
and
cell
things moving,
membrane.
but it still allows energy in, and open is complete transfer. So you could say that this is an open boundary because you can say that this cube of air in front of me is an open system. So that is
This cube right here.
yes.
My cube.
I'm proud of
My
you.
companion cube.
And so then the first law is energy conservation. So that is our delta E is equal to
Can't
Q
be
minus W.
Created or destroyed, right?
Yep. So energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be changed into other forms.
The first rule of thermodynamics is that we don't talk about thermodynamics.
In most cases, but I felt today it was necessary.
Broke the first rule.
And the second law is, if you want to be in technical terms, it is S is equal to Q or T dt and something like that. But
it looks like a person
basically,
that's been split in half.
oh yeah, that does that. It looks like you cut his neck off right there, and
Well,
that's
it
the
looks
sword
like
blade.
You cut right underneath his arms, and then you flipped his leg upside down. He was in the middle of doing
Oh, I can see that.
like
Yeah,
a Russian jump, and then you.
I got you. Yeah, like that's the bottom half of his body, and it's like falling to the side, and then that's.
Oh, see, I saw it completely flipped upside down. Like the top of the T are his legs.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, I can see that. All right, so this is what I want you to remember. So this is that entropy always increases in practical situations. So the universe is spiraling towards chaos, and we're all doomed. But that's basically what I'm getting at.
I mean, we know that already.
Yeah. So at this point, I think we are done with thermodynamic discussion. We have a couple other things we can do. I didn't know if you wanted to make any adjustments to your stock, because I know that I recently passed you in the...
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
So make
we're
the
going
adjustments
to...
that will make me win.
We're going to go look at that, so I will be switching the screen over to that. Okay, so if you can see this right now, you can see that Megan is currently behind me by about 22,000 Jonos. And you do have a lot of money to spend, so you could keep your blues and buy something else.
What's cheap right now? Green?
Actually, everything's doing pretty well. The system in general has been going up. Yes, green is the cheapest at the moment.
I'm
so
put it on some green. I'm gonna do a little bit more blue.
If you look at how green has been doing, blue is actually at its all-time peak. So if you were interested in selling out, that might be a relatively interesting decision. But
if I sell 75% of my blues and use 100% of those sales toward greens.
Do you want to sell 75% or do you want to sell 750? Because you have 1,042 blues, so I can do 75% of that, but it's gonna be a weird number.
What's 75% of it?
75%
like
of
780, 790.
Oh god. Alright, 42 times 0.75 is 781.5.
Okay, we're gonna do 780.
Okay. So if I subtract
We're gonna sell
780.
780.
1042 minus
It'd be
780.
300.
262.
Yeah.
So 262.
And
Enter. And then, hold on, I gotta go add
700.
that. I gotta figure out how much money that was. So that was 780
780.
times 290 is equal to 226,200.
200. So I'm gonna use that amount of money to buy green.
So you're using as much of this as possible to buy green? Is that what you're gonna do?
100% of what I just sold, yes.
Okay.
And then I still have my other money left over. Right?
Divided by 126. Yeah, so you still have about 50,000 sitting in the bank. And I'm gonna imagine that this isn't going to be perfect in division. It's not. So you're gonna have a little bit extra from this.
Just do 1795.
Okay, 1795, and then I'll put the extra. So let me see.
Yeah, this stuff is taxes. I don't know.
Let me see how much you actually. So if I do 1795 times 126 is equal to that, and then we're gonna minus the total from. We're gonna minus that from the total.
Sure.
You have 30 left over that we're gonna add to this guy. So
my bank.
to your bank, yes. So for
Perfect.
I'm just doing everything on the calculator to
I'm great at
make
this.
sure that this is being correct. So
For a short
this
period
is
of time in economics, I was in like second and third place. For
yeah.
like a whole week during that thing in economics, and then I gave up. I was like, nah, I don't.
I was also in second place in economics for a while, and then I was in dead last and lost more money than I started off with. So
It's funny that I beat you by completely giving up.
well, that was the problem, was that I cared. I think because I was doing.
You can't care about one. You don't
I was doing day trades and I was making a profit, but the problem was everybody else was just buying into one thing, and half the people get lucky, half of them wouldn't, but there were enough people getting lucky to kick me out of the top 10%. So I was like, all right, I gotta do something stupid. So I tried, and it worked for a little bit.
You're at school Monday. What time do you get home?
What time do I get home on Monday?
Late, right? That's the late night?
Yeah, that's a little late. That'd be like 8ish.
I was gonna buy the office furniture.
Well, we can talk about that later. But
I was just gonna get.
yeah, go
We're
for it.
gonna fix the office because right now it's basically a storage room, and it's really sad. And I could show you, but there's a Barbie bug over there, which is really from when we were kids, and just a bunch of crap we have to get rid of. But by the end of this month, this office can be done, and there's gonna be like posters in the background and stuff, and it's
Yep.
gonna be cool. I'm gonna spend a lot of money.
We'll be over there.
Ooh,
So-
yeah. So you
Well,
might see the closet.
We'll probably still be here, but we'll be facing that way. So instead
So
of
it's gonna look like this.
yeah, you're just gonna be staring at the back of our heads the entire
Or me
time.
talking like this. It's,
Yeah.
it's a new like performance acting
Mhm.
kind of method.
It's showing how we're turning our backs on society because we don't agree with the standards and the
Morale
yeah.
of the country.
But so if you want to go support Megan, I'm gonna put a link up in the corner over there. It'll pop out. It's
Support
a little
me,
eye
I'm
icon.
fun.
That is not necessarily. You can't just vote right from there. You have to click on that, go to the video from Thursday, and then you can vote on that video because I want all the votes to be in the same place so that it's easier for me to tally them up. So she is highly invested in green. If you want to support me, I'm pretty highly invested in yellow, but it is completely your choice. You can vote for whatever you want. And we are going to do our last section, which I figured I could
The
have
drawing?
you help me with my random drawing. So we will switch over to
I
that.
did pretty good with the trapezoid around my foot. I feel like that was a pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at coming up with things. Like
Okay.
one time for a Christmas party, I painted a clown in a tutu holding a cactus, and it was supposed to be like the black sheep gift, but then everyone really actually loved it. So no, I'm serious. People are fighting over it. They're trying to trade it for stuff.
Mhm.
Okay,
I think I forgot to. Oh no, I crossed it out. So
can I?
yeah. I'm just gonna get it set up. So we have done 3 of these on the new sheet. So we are just going to do through 1 through 22. And
There aren't any crossed out. There's only 2 crossed out in each of these.
1, 2, 3.
I didn't
1,
see that
2,
one, and I
3,
didn't see
1.
dog. You didn't cross them out. Good.
I'm pretty sure you crossed out
Okay, out
one
of
of them.
22, but there's 25.
There's 25, but 3 of them are already crossed out. So if it's past these, we'll just move down 1 extra.
Okay.
So
we have tennis shoes.
is that the first one?
Yeah.
9? Okay. So tennis shoes. Our second number.
We have. Is that Peck?
Wait, what
That's
number
my
is it?
handwriting. 19.
19. Okay, remember that you're going to have to move. You're going to have to move it down twice. So because we have 2 crossed off already, so we're going down to 21. Because there's this one and this one, so you're skipping that when you're counting. So 19.
Well, they get moved up.
Yeah, so the whole thing moves up.
Yeah,
so,
that is 19.
So we're actually at apologize. And then our final number is 11, but we are going to shift that down 3.
Elegant.
All right. So
basically, we're just drawing a scene from holes.
So we have elegant tennis shoes, and we're apologizing. Is that what we're going with?
Them.
So we're gonna have Mr. Shia LaBeouf.
Just do it.
So
that was my impression.
Shia is gonna be here with his little goatee, and he.
I don't think he had a goatee in holes.
Yeah, but you know, I'm drawing the just do it part. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so this is
Shia.
Shia.
We could be saying that to Zero. Just do it with the nice. What were they? Air Jordans? What were they? That you stole.
I think they were Jordans. I'm not completely sure, but. And then Shia is well, okay, he's not being necessarily elegant in this case. So this is
the shoes are elegant.
The shoes themselves are elegant. So we're gonna have
instead of Air Jordans, we could draw a pair of like Alexander McQueen's heels.
Well, we have tennis shoes, so we can't really go with heels unless they're like heel tennis shoes. But I don't know.
There are those.
I've seen them.
There are like heeled Converse, which look so strange, but at the same time, I really like them. Like I wouldn't be able to pull off the look because I'm like, you know, like.
Well, you already run in heels all the time.
I do.
Yeah. So here are our elegant shoes. They are radiating with their elegance. And then Zero is over here. He's shorter than Shia LaBeouf, right? He's got
even his fro.
He's got the fro.
My favorite character right there.
And but he's also got the shorter shovel, right? That was his thing. Yeah, he would always get the shorter shovel. Because you could dig a shorter hole because it just had to be as deep and as wide as the shovel.
Right.
But so yeah, here's Zero, and he is he's not too happy because he's apologizing for Shia. Spoiler alert: Zero is actually the one who stole the shoes in the first place, correct? And then he threw them over the bridge.
Because he was scared. Because he's like, why are they chasing me?
He's gonna be remembering that scene at the bridge. When
just draw a bridge.
And so this is that's like the wall of the bridge, and then Shia's down here. He's like, the heck, and then Zero's up here. That's his fro.
Wow.
And then
that looks like just an inception thought. Like it just looks like another thought cloud is growing.
And then these are tied together, and they're falling down. Gaining kinetic energy as they fall, but losing potential, so we have a conservation there. And then Shia is like, don't let your dreams be dreams. That's the wrong quote, right?
I don't know. I've never actually seen the video. I just seen the memes.
I'm pretty sure that's DJ Khaled.
Don't let your dreams be memes.
Oh no, it might be. I don't know. Someone post in the comments. I'm bad at memes, I guess.
Don't let memes become your dreams.
Yeah, that if you just had like Dat Boy breaking down walls in your dreams, I think you should go check out that with a doctor.
That would be terrifying. I'd probably wake up screaming and be like, no.
Okay, but
is that the frog thing?
Yeah, that's the frog on the unicycle. So we have our picture, and is there anything you want to add to this before we sign off? Because we are right on about an hour.
Elegant shoe, and
yep.
He's apologizing. He's not apologizing.
Oh, okay. Yet. Sorry.
Bruh.
Bruh.
We had to put an H. Yeah, good, perfect. Otherwise, people are gonna be like, "Where's the bra? I wanted to see boobies."
Sorry, bruh. Yeah. Okay. So this now Shia LaBeouf or I guess what was it? Is Stanley, right? Stanley in the movie.
Yelnats.
Stanley
It's his
Yelnats
last name,
and
but it's his
Zero
first name
are now
backwards.
partners in crime, stealing elegant shoes. But Zero is haunted by his past of stealing the original shoes and throwing them over the bridge.
It's okay that they're stealing shoes because they're making so much money with sploosh that they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. They're earning enough money to steal shoes legally.
Yeah.
So
they're paying for them. They're buying shoes.
yeah, they're buying shoes, but then
With
they
money
still
from
they
sploosh.
break in, then they pay them for all the damages and stuff.
It's just for the thrill. It's just for the thrill.
It's something eccentric what people do. So this is our finished picture. Thank you for coming on. I hope that I didn't torture you too much with the thermodynamics
I probably
talk.
made about 3 times longer than it needed to be, but you know.
But
it's fine.
you asked the questions, you got the thoughts flowing, so I think that it was a fairly successful stream. And I'm happy with the picture. This will be posted on Facebook so that everybody can see this. But we are going to be signing off because it is pushing on an hour now, and I know you have a test you have to do, correct?
I have to read 2 chapters before.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Maybe.
So I'm going to be signing this off, but I will be back Thursday to give you an update. We're probably going to be shying away from the updates on the game just because I don't think I'm going to have too many more updates as frequently as I have been. But I am thinking about bringing back Jeffrey and trying the game AI at the environment project. So, do you have something you want to add? Or you...
No, don't worry about it. I can tell you after. It was about your other game.
Okay.
Like
so,
way long ago.
That is all we wanted to say. But once again, up in the corner, there is a link to that video, and you can go vote in the stock market. And I will be seeing you Thursday. So, goodbye.